So, if you're here, you're probably about to run the Sablewood Messenger's Quick Start Adventure for your players. Whether you've run numerous RPGs in the past, or this is your first time taking on the GM role, we'll lead you through everything you need to know to have a successful first session of Daggerheart. Alright, read the following aloud. Let's get the, the DM voice. I don't actually have a real DM voice, but I'll get one. This evening, your party finally made it to the Sablewood, a sprawling forest of colossal trees some say are even older than the Forgotten Gods. It's a place renowned for two things. Its sunken pathways that provide trade routes for many traveling merchants, and it's... Okay, wait, we already read this. Wait a second. This was the summary! Okay, wait. Oh, no, we almost got to the end where it wasn't the summary anymore. Okay, and its unique hybrid animals. Even now, from within the carriage, you can hear strange sounds. The bird calls of the lark moths, the croak of the lemur toads, and the skittering of a family of fox bats in the underbrush. One of you is driving the carriage. Who is it? This is something that I noticed, and we'll immediately do it again, where they mention it during the, like, GM principles, the flow of the game, that the GM is supposed to ask questions, clarifying questions back to the players. And in my head, when I read that, I was like, yeah, that's, like, good clarifiers about, like, what the players are doing. What, like, how they're interacting with the scene. Reading this, it is much more, like, collaborative storytelling vibe of, like, they want the players to, like, define things about the world, which is interesting. It's interesting. I'll have to... It's going to be something that I will feel very awkward doing a lot of the time, and, you know, you can probably do it more or less, depending on your vibe, but they recommend it multiple times throughout this. As an infant, really more like fetal, GM, I appreciate the very step-by-step instructions here. Easy to modify, of course, but for those of us who need guardrails, they're here. Absolutely. This entire, from what I have seen, this is very beat. Like, boom, 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 boom. Which I mean, that's literally how they describe it, you know, within the overview. But... And so that's kind of what I want to do here today for myself, is look at those beats and look at where I can maybe look at expanding them a little bit, maybe look at some alternative approaches. But yeah, I absolutely agree that I like the step-by-step nature of it. And I can, you know, look at modifying it because I have more experience, but it's very, very nice for beginning DMs. So, when a player volunteers their character as the carriage driver, you can ask them a question like, you've noticed something unique about the look of the trees here in the Sablewood. What is it? That is very much like, hey, world build really quick for me. You know? Which is very interesting. It's very interesting. I was thinking last night about, like, how I would actually go about doing that sort of thing. And I think that I would have maybe more personalized questions. So there's one later during Seeking an Arcanist. Yeah, there we go. So when talking about the Clover Tavern, one of the questions is, how does the second floor of this tavern look so wildly different than the first? What smell permeates the air throughout this place? What unique custom do the locals seem to participate in every time you walk in the room? This is like very direct, hey, players, please world build. I did have a thought that something that might be more comfortable for me, personally, is phrasing the questions more like... Something about this place reminds you of home. What is it? Like, I want to engage because I think that players are going to be used to world building and describing their backstories, especially if they come from something like D&D. But I don't think that they will be very used to the idea of world building the world around them. Like, I feel like if I asked my D&D group, how does this second floor look so wildly different than the first? I feel like they would be like, I don't know, how does it? Like, they're so used to, like, you know, me describing the shit. But if I say, hey, blah, 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 hey, Zenshi, the second floor of this tavern reminds you oddly of home. How so? Or, you know, something like that. I think that will be able, for my group at least, I think I'll be able to more directly engage them with questions like that, you know? Based on the answer, describe the trees they are passing as having those features. This is utilizing one of the GM principles in Daggerheart. Ask questions and incorporate the answers. Then read the following aloud. As your steed pulls the carriage around a tight corner, one wheel coming off the ground for just a moment, you see an overturned merchant's cart lying sideways in the path before you, blocking your way. A scattering of fruits and vegetables litter the trail. From around the side of the carriage steps a Strix wolf, a large creature with the body of a wolf, the face of an owl, and large wings adorning its back. It finishes chewing its meal, the hand of the dead merchant, as it stares at you, curious, trying to judge whether you're friend or foe. Then you see, following clumsily behind, 2 small pups, watching their mother cautiously. From within, the rest of you feel your carriage come to a stop. What would you like to do? Very nice. I like the, there's a core principle in Blades that I have been trying to incorporate into all of my games because I think it is such a good generalized principle, is foreshadow danger. Foreshadow danger. I think that this, like, stopping before the Strixwolf attacks is, like, definitional foreshadow danger. It is, oh, there is something very clearly dangerous right in front of you, but you get a chance to act before the danger, you know, increases. And we'll see with the next session, with an ambush. Foreshadowing danger can sometimes be tricky with an ambush, but I already have a thought on exactly how I want to do it. I already have a thought. Allow the PCs to roleplay for a bit if they like. When somebody approaches the merchant cart, that will trigger the first action roll. Dun 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 dun. Action roll. Wow. All right, the first action roll. The Strixwolf is wary of your movement. And to be clear first, there is plenty of time for the PCs to do whatever they like. It is only when somebody approaches that it will trigger the action roll. So there's still this level of foreshadowing. We're not immediately having them make the action roll, right? The Strixwolf is wary of your movement. Let's make our first roll to see how she reacts. This will be using your presence trait, so grab your duality dice and roll them. Then add your presence. You can also spend a hope before the roll to add an experience if it applies. Tell me the total and which die rolled higher. This is something I'm going to have to get used to, is that this system reminds me so much of Blades more than D&D, so it'll be weird for me to start asking for specific abilities again, because in Blades, PCs choose which ability they roll with. So, like, the DM wouldn't say, like, roll with presence, or roll for presence. The PC would say, I'm going to use presence. So that's going to be a rewiring of my brain, but absolutely not bad. So then they kind of lay out some successes and some critical successes. If they rolled a 10 or higher, it's a success. Describe the Strixwolf calmly trying to keep her pups out of danger. If the roll was with hope, tell the player to mark a hope. If the roll was with fear, take a fear token for later. You also have the opportunity to make a GM move. This is your chance to introduce a consequence to the scene. It should not undermine the success, but rather forward the narrative in an exciting way. You might say, the mother hoot howls, as if calling to another Strixwolf among the trees. You know you might not be alone for long. I like that. I like that as a success with failure. Of, like, I think I would... So we're supposed to describe the calmly trying to keep her pups out of danger as well as this. So I would personally describe her, like, basically getting off the path in general, so that, you know, she's not, like, if they go up to the cart, she won't really be a factor. But she is calling in, and this is also an opportunity, and I'll be honest, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't talk about it. I think that it is probably because they don't want to overwhelm new GMs, but this seems like the absolute perfect time to introduce a counter. Or whatever it's called in this, countdown. This seems like a very perfect place to introduce a countdown of you have this many seconds or this many whatever until another Strixwolf shows up. You know, you have this many counts on the countdown. I think very, very good opportunity for that, but I think it's probably like an overwhelming thing for new GMs. Failure. If they rolled a 9 or below, it is a failure. Describe it, the Strixwolf snarling and snapping, angry that the PC is approaching. And this is sort of interesting about this action roll, about like what a failure is or isn't. This requires you to kind of assume what the failure is, like make it a bad thing, because if the players just want to approach the Strixwolf, you know, if that is their thing, then even this success state might not be exactly what they want. So sussing that out with your players, which you get better at as a campaign goes on, about like what a character would want and what makes a success for that player. You get better at that as you go on in a campaign. But this is kind of interesting to me, of like, the success is the Strixwolf leaves, the failure is that they stick around. which was, yeah, a little bit interesting. But the roll was with hope. Tell the player to mark a hope. You still get to make a GM move because it's with hope, but because it's with hope, it shouldn't be as bad as it could be. You might say, with one last snarl, she leans down to have her pups clamber onto her back before taking off into the air, landing on a nearby branch. She is watching your every move. You know, this is fine. This is fine. I don't want to say it's not. But to me, this is a bit of Quantum Ogre, which, is there a bit missing there or in the wrong order? I don't think so. I think it is sort of in the wrong order. So I think the roll with hope is supposed to refer to this, and then if the roll is with fear, things go badly. Describe the Strixwolf snarling at the PC. Tell them to mark a stress. So I think basically this is the description of fear or of failure. Like this is what happens when you fail. And then if the roll is with hope, they take a hope, and if it's with fear, they mark a stress and still do this. It's the way you're guessing in the PDF. Gotcha. Yeah, so to me, and again, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, I didn't know what I was talking about until very recently. Ryan Immel taught me this concept of the Quantum Ogre, where if you're, I just talked about this yesterday, I think, but if you're a PC, you know, you're in front of two doors, right? Two doors. You want to think that there is something different behind each of these doors, right? That the rooms behind these are two different rooms. That one of them contains an ogre, and one of them contains, you know, fucking, like, treasure, or whatever. And that choosing the right one will get you the right reward. The Quantum Ogre is the concept that the ogre is behind whichever door you choose. No matter which door you choose, there's an ogre behind it. And this can sort of be confused and conflated sometimes with a concept that I talk a lot about, which is having floating concepts. So later in Seeking an Arcanist, they talk about if the players would like to talk to an NPC, you can choose one of the options below. And then later, it says, if they bypassed asking someone in the town, just use one of the NPCs from the list here instead. After a few exchanges, you can have the NPC say something like this. So these three NPCs are not in a specific location. These three NPCs are wherever you need them to be, right? They are wherever makes sense, because you don't want to have to prep 9 different NPCs, 3 that are wandering the streets, 3 that are in their homes, and 3 that are in the bar. You just want to be able to prep 3, and then wherever the PCs decide to go, that is where those NPCs happen to be. That is the idea of the floating sort of plot point, the floating NPC. And there is a there's sort of the, I think the key difference between Schrodinger's ogre. Sort of Schrodinger's ogre. Yeah, the key difference between Quantum Ogre and what I would call a floating plot point, or a floating NPC, or a floating resource, a floating beat, is that the floating beat you have not portrayed as being different than something else. The key problem that Quantum Ogre hits on is when you present players with a choice that is not actually a choice. It's a very key difference where the players, if it feels like there is a binary decision, there needs to be 2 different outcomes. Otherwise, it is the ogre. We have our Strixwolf. So it looks like, so when I brought up the Quantum Ogre originally, it seems like in both of these cases, the Strixwolf kind of leaves. Like, she either leaves to keep her pup out of danger, or she leaves because you failed. So this, to me, is a bit Quantum Ogre of like, well, she leaves either way. It's just like how badly it goes for you, which I don't love. And one of the things I'm thinking about is if we're starting from number 1, I know, because I've read through this a little bit, that we are about to go into an ambush after this, right? So my thinking is that on the success state versus the failure state, on the success, the Strixwolves just kind of fuck off. They just kind of fuck off and we keep going. On the failure state, they seem like they fuck off, But when we route back to number 2, which is the ambush, because you failed, kerchonk, the Strix Wolves come into the ambush. So the failure to defuse the situation in beat 1 is going to make beat 2 that little bit harder. That is kind of what I'm thinking so far. Because otherwise, it seems like there's not, like, especially if you fucking fail with hope. If you fail with hope, what's the difference between that and... Honestly, failing with hope in this case seems better than succeeding with fear, because with succeeding with fear, another Strix Wolf shows up. So honestly, this seems worse within their recommended, state. So these are the general aspects that I'm thinking of. Although, let's think about this a little bit more, because there are 4 aspects to this, right? There are 4 aspects. On number 1, there is kind of like this. So there's failing with fear, which I think I like what they did. We can abstract these both just into the fail state. And just if you fail with fear, you also get a stress. And what we could do is we could abstract these both into the success state, and where like the GM just gets the fear if we want. But they also do want us to complicate the situation a little bit. So I'm thinking if it's a success, the Strix Wolf totally fucks off. If it's a fear, they maybe stick around. So success with fear, they stick around and they may or may not impact beat 2 negatively. So I'm thinking on a success with fear, they stick around and they're maybe there for beat 2. Maybe. This path is automatic. They're angry. They're upset. But this one, I don't know. They're not so sure. They're a little bit questioning. They may join you. They may join the Thicket Thieves. They're just going to be there presenting a potential threat. So if this is a success with failure, during the number 2, during the ambush with the Thicket Thieves, I am absolutely going to remind the players that the Strix Wolves are there. I will absolutely be reminding them of that factor and being like, they're eyeing this entire combat. They aren't getting involved yet, but you're not sure. And honestly, if the Strix Wolves do absolutely nothing else, that mental impact on the players is totally worth a failure. That is psychological warfare, to just have these 2 predators watching your fight as it goes. Knowing that they could leave, they could join for you, they could join for the others. Having this just neutral third party is what I'm thinking of for the success with failure. So for beat 1, I'm thinking success, I should say success with hope. Success with hope is Strix Wolf fucks off. Failure with hope. Failure with hope is that they get into long range, but stick around and will probably join the enemies in beat 2, but party gains a hope. But party gains a hope. And I'm going to say maybe like DC to scare them off will put at like a 10 for failure with hope. But for failure with fear, all the same shit, but the party does not get a hope. And I'm going to see the DC to scare them off is a 15. So we have sort of this escalating thing where a very similar thing happens, but the DC to scare them off is worse because they failed with fear rather than failing with hope. That's sort of what I'm feeling for this. And you can see there's really, like, in terms of, like, what I'm actually prepping for, it's pretty fucking generalized. I'm not even, like, thinking that much about it. We're just going quick, you know? Maybe success with fear gives a new opportunity. They stick around but roll to see if you can persuade the wolf to join you, and if you fail, they turn against you. Yeah, that's totally fair. Yeah. DC to join. DC to persuade the Strix Wolf. And we'll set it at a 10. We'll set it at a 10. On failure, they fight against. On success, they join. If the players don't try, they just observe. They just chill it. They just chill there. You know? Just subtly increasing the cognitive strain. Absolutely. Pulling the Strix Wolf into the ambush under some conditions. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. Also makes sense for predators who have clearly habituated to feeding on humanoids to be aware that combat might mean dinner later. That's exactly what I'm thinking. Is that on the success with fear, they're just like, I don't know. Like, let's see. They just observe. And regardless, they stay around psychological warfare. Also call another Strix Wolf. So we're putting the party into a more precarious situation, right? There are two Strix Wolves observing this. If the party doesn't interact, they just chill out. But if the party does interact, it's a relatively easy check where they might be able to get the Strix Wolves on their side, but it's a risk because on a failure, they will fight against you. Yeah, I like that. Oh, I forgot critical success. If both die roll the same number, it's a crit success. Tell the PC to mark hope, clear stress if they have one. Then describe the Strix Wolf moving towards the PC, head down, tail wagging. It sniffs their head and sits in front of them. Okay. Ooh, okay, wait. I've got something here. Okay. So, we have another and even better critical success. Critical success, befriend Strix Wolf. Yay! Now, something that we can do here. The Strix Wolf, you might remember... Wait, what? This is the Strix Wolf mother. Does she not have... Oh, interesting. She doesn't have it. Okay, wait. We just saw the Strix Wolf, right? The Strix Wolf earlier. The Strix Wolf has powerful senses. This creature ignores the hidden condition on anyone within close range. The next part of this, the Thicket Thieves, is that there are these thistle folk that are supposed to be sneaking up on the PCs, right? That's like part of the ambush. And one of the options is see them coming, where they're supposed to make an instinct roll with a difficulty of 14. Yeah, so I'm absolutely thinking with the Strix Wolf's powerful senses, with it ignoring the hidden condition, you know, maybe it's it's a little bit of a pet. It's just kind of prowling around as they're investigating, and then it will lower the instinct roll DC. It lowers the instinct roll DC from a 14 to a 10 as it perks up its ears and looks towards the bushes. There's still a chance that, you know, the PCs don't see what it sees, but I think it lowers this instinct roll because of the crit success. Now, let's see what we have here. The ambush. Thicket Thieves. The fallout. Let the events of the previous act play out, allowing the players to roleplay and take other actions. Use the scenarios below for guidance. Scenarios. If they search the merchant cart, you could talk about the cart being stripped of all valuables and showcase the dead driver with a mangled arm picked over by the Strix Wolf family for food. If the PCs inspect the body further, they might find out that the driver had his neck slit. Honestly, so this is where earlier I was talking about like you always foreshadow danger. I'm thinking that for mine, I'm going to modify this slightly, and I think I am not going to put it behind like a second layer of inspection. It is just if they search the merchant cart, they will notice that the driver had his neck slit. And you know, if they are like, does it look like a fucking a fucking Strix Wolf did that? I'm going to be like, no, very clearly it does not. Because that will foreshadow the type of danger that the party might be in the future. Making the throat slitting more obvious. Or you could build in, so there's a couple of ways to go about it. You can either make there be more sources of foreshadowing, so you can have them be harder to get to, like putting the neck slit behind two separate things. And you could also highlight, one of the things that you could highlight that does foreshadow the danger is talking about the cart being stripped of all valuables. You could highlight that it is like the chests are open and like very clearly have been looted. Like these are like strong boxes full of gold, right? Make it very clear that things are gone from the cart that the Strix Wolves would not have taken. I think either of those very much foreshadows the danger. And in that case, you can have the next slit hid behind it. So like the highlighting the stripped of all valuables really prominently, and then if they search further, then having the next slit be more obvious. Or having this be downplayed slightly, but also having this be more obvious. You can kind of pull these levers a little bit if you want. If they attack the Strixwolf, have them make a melee attack at a difficulty of 10. On a success, they deal damage using their weapon. The pups will flee. The Strixwolf Mother has 3 HP and some like decent damage thresholds. Interesting. If they fail any rolls to interact with the Strixwolf, it will put its pup on its back and fly to a nearby tree, watching the adventurers from above. If they try to find signs of something strange, they see the remnants of thorny bramble tangled around the wheel of the carriage and strewn across the road. Aha, that's another one. I like, okay, you know what? Maybe I spoke too soon about modifying this. I think if you litter it with strange signs, right? Like searching the merchant cart, being stripped of valuables, looking even further into the next slit, thorny bramble tangled around the wheels, like all of these, I would want to make sure that I hit at least one thing. So like if they want to move the merchant cart out of the way, are taking steps to get the carriage moving again, or trying to leave the trail, move to the ambush. I would want to have at least a really minor bit of foreshadowing that is totally like almost guaranteed. It's not absolutely necessary, but all of these, they only get if they ask the right questions. I would want something that is very ambiguous, that they get no matter what. So, I actually think something that I like here is the remnants of thorny bramble tangled around the wheel of the carriage. I like that, because that is absolutely something that they could misinterpret as being natural, but it is also something that sort of might indicate that something weird is going on. Something that you could even do is you could place this information back in beat 1. So you could put this back in beat 1 so that they have some time to actually forget about the foreshadowing. So you put it back in beat 1 when you are still describing the nature of the carriage. That way they maybe have in the back of their minds that something weird is going on, but then they have the whole interaction with the Strixwolf, and they might forget. And then after that interaction with the Strixwolf, they might search it out more at that point. Okay. The ambush. When the moment feels right, or one of the above scenarios triggers it, ask the PC who seems like they are paying attention to their surroundings to make an instinct roll, which, I will say, if none of my PCs are paying attention, even with the critical success of the Strixwolf, honestly, that might be a thing. I might actually build that into the critical success of... It will, when the ambush is about to start, it notices something in the brush, lowering the instinct roll for detecting the ambush from 14 to 10, or allowing them to roll instinct, or to roll the original instinct roll, even if none of them were originally paying attention. Because that's a big thing. If none of them are paying attention, and they are all, like, distinctly narrated to be oblivious, yeah, I might not even give them the option to roll the instinct roll. So that's part of maybe my personal style, is I want to give them guaranteed clues towards making the right decisions, and then if they still choose not to, I'm pretty punishing. So that is maybe my more inside of my style, is I want to give them a guaranteed clue that maybe sets them on edge, maybe sets them towards paying attention to their surroundings, sets one of them to be the guard, let's say. And if they actively choose not to do that, that's on them. They don't even get an instinct roll. That's sort of where my mind goes with it. On a success, they notice eyes watching them from the darkness beyond the trail. If it was with fear, the PC marks a stress. Use the see them coming prompts. On a failure, if they are immediately ambushed. If it was with fear, the PC marks a stress. Use the ambush prompts. So, for see them coming. You hear the sound of a branch snapping and turn to see 4 thistle folk sneaking through the underbrush, attempting to get the jump on your party. The overturned cart was a distraction, but their plan didn't work. I'm taking out the action tracker, and we're going to set up a map. Ambushed. In a whirlwind of cracking branches and unsheathed blades, a group of 4 thistlefolk jump out from the brush alongside the road. The overturned cart was an ambush. They stand before you, weapons drawn, blocking the road. And taking out the action tracker, and we're going to set up a battle map. They'll act first. Setting up a battle map. So, this is something that I was really curious about. And this is one of the parts where I'm like, oh, this seems a little bit more in-person oriented. Set the action tracker somewhere within reach of all players. Remind them that anytime they make an action roll, they must first add a token. You then take the forest terrain you've cut out and ask your players to help you spread it across the table to build a map. You may also encourage them to grab other items from around the room and add terrain to the map. Build out the play space together. Finally, place the overturned merchant's cart on the table and ask the players to put their miniatures nearby where they think they would be in the scene, along with their carriage. Take out the Thistlefolk ambusher standees and the Thistlefolk thief. Beginning the encounter. Below, you'll find the stat blocks for the ambushers and the thieves. You'll use those stat blocks to run the remainder of this encounter. So I've looked through this encounter. Seems like a pretty straightforward example of combat. I will say, I like the Thistlefolk's goal. The ambushers are meant to keep the party's attention while the thief attempts to steal their carriage. And that is absolutely how I will be running this encounter. Because especially the thief, if I go back to the Thistlefolk thief, they have a move called Back Off. Spend a fear and make an attack roll against the target. On a success, the thief places their hand on the target's chest and blasts them backwards, dealing 2d8 magic damage and pushing them into far range. They fucking just blast you out of the sky. So, you use the ambushers to get the thief to the carriage, and if there's anyone around the carriage, the thief just fucking blows them away. So I will absolutely be running this encounter with that in mind. I think that is very, very important. So we've got our kind of paths coming out of 1, and all of these paths are leading back to 2. Now we're having the combat. There's a couple of options, and I want to see if they okay, yeah, they don't even talk about like the actual like potential fallout of the ambush of the combat. So we have to determine that ourselves. So the fallout of the combat will either be, I think there's kind of like 3 options, right? The Thistlefolk die. The Thistlefolk fucking dead, skull and crossbones, motherfucker. The Thistlefolk run, or the Thistlefolk succeed. I guess there is also the possibility of the party running, but this is where I talk about, sometimes the party can surprise you, sometimes they won't. I really do not anticipate any party I run with running away from this combat. It certainly is a possibility, but I am willing to bet that I will just be able to improv it because I think it is pretty unlikely. So I'm not really going to prep for it. These are kind of our 3 things. If the Thistlefolk run, I also don't think that I will really need to think about this that much. Like if the Thistlefolk run away, I don't really anticipate my PCs chasing after them. Especially if we have talked about the Sablewood, we have talked about all of the dangerous things that could be lurking in the underbrush. I don't anticipate my party really chasing after them. So I think we can erase this expectation as well. So I think there are kind of 2, I would say, real paths that we might have to consider. Is that the Thistlefolk succeed, and I'm counting succeeding as fully getting away, at which case, the party just don't have the carriage anymore. They kind of fucking fail. Because the carriage contains the thing that they need to get to the Arcanist. So this is bad. This is really, really bad for our story if the Thistlefolk succeed in their goal. But we have to consider it because the Thistlefolk are trying to succeed and the dice might be fully against our players that day. So we have to think about their motivation is to steal the carriage, which contains the MacGuffin inside of it. But if they do that, then our entire rest of our story is fucking screwed. So what do we do? It might as well be a self-propelled carriage, also more tempting to steal, true. Maybe the Thistlefolk dump the big heavy things as they're rushing away. Possible. So that is a possibility. So we can think about this, right? That is one line that we could think about. What up, Irish Thomas? How you doing? that is one line that we can consider, is they dump the things. And this can kind of be our contingency line. This can kind of be our contingency for if all else fails, is they dump the big heavy shit, maybe to make the carriage faster. And, like, especially if we abstract this into being a self-propelled carriage, they might literally just want the carriage. And so if the PCs are catching up to them at all, which they have to because this has the MacGuffin, then the Thistlefolk dump the big heavy shit, make the cart faster to the point where the PCs can't catch up, but now they have to haul the big heavy thing all the way to Hush. This sounds like a good consequence. And honestly, if you want to end your prep there, like if you just want to prep that line and have that line fully lead to 3 with some amount of consequence, like, right, we have to determine a consequence for this line, which I'm thinking right now, I'm honestly, oh, I need to erase all that. Right now, I'm honestly thinking that that seems like a very good place to give a very distinct stress consequence. So I'm going to say stress, bro, I might even say +2 for everyone. Or actually, no. You know what I would love? You know what I would love that would be so evocative, right? So I'm prepping this for 3 people. So I was about to say 2 stress for the entire party per. Very big debuff, but they fucking lost. They deserve a really big debuff. They deserve a really big consequence, right? So they absolutely deserve this. They lost. That's their punishment. I was originally thinking 2 stress per, but what might actually be more interesting is 6 stress split however they want. However they want. Which I think, number 1, is interesting, but I also think could be sort of evocative of, like, one person doing most of the work to get the thing there. And you know what? I'll even be a little nice to them. I'll lower the stress amount. I'll lower the stress amount to where it's still more than it would have been, but I'll call it 4. So 4 stress split however they want, so that if they just have their fucking guardian just loading it onto their shoulders and tromping the entire way there, and their guardian has 4 stress once they get to Hush, I think that's hilarious. I think that's so fucking funny. So I think that is what I'm thinking. Or they can split it up a little bit more evenly if they're, you know, actually carrying it together. And we could just say that if the Thistlefolk die or they run or whatever, that we just go to 3. Like, I don't see really any, like, reward that we need to give them, because the Thistlefolk just have a serrated blade, which, to be fair, if maybe the PCs want the serrated blade, maybe they could take it. You know, maybe the Thistlefolk have, like, one... Oh, no. It's getting confused. Maybe they have, like, 1 handful of gold. Maybe they have, like, 1 handful of gold on them between all of them. I don't think that they have, like, the original riches from the garage on them. We could also do something to the degree of, ooh. I have an idea. So we'll give them 1 handful of gold. But there is something later in this. There's the ward renewal. This is basically the final combat. During the ward renewal, the ritual begins. Allura, or sorry, the White Fire Arcanist, not Allura, goes through her whole deal, and there are 4 ancient skeletons and 2 forest rays that you fight by default. However, you feel a rumble as 4 ancient skeletons emerge from the ground, rusty swords in hand, disturbed by the forces of magic used by the Arcanist. And there is a Vengeance of the Veil, which is an encounter move, where you spend a fear to call forth 2 additional skeletons from the ground within close range of the carriage. Do you know what I'm seeing? I'm seeing a foreshadowing opportunity, baby! I am seeing if we defeat the Thicket Thieves, or the Thicket Thieves, we get 1 handful of gold, but we also get foreshadowing. We get that all of the bodies meld into the ground. Basically the opposite of the mechanic that we are going to see in the final fight. All the bodies meld into the ground. So we get one handful of gold. Who fucking cares? What we get more of is foreshadowing. We get narrative. So that is our real reward for success. Then by the time that you get to ward renewal and they see this mechanic happen, they know that there's more than 4 skeletons waiting for them at the end. So, seeking an arcanist. Arrival in Hush. Read the following aloud. The path leads you into the forest until you spot a large stone pillar carved top to bottom in ancient dwarven symbols. This denotes one corner of the peaceful village of Hush. When you pass beyond the stone marker, you feel a small sensation like the pop of a bubble. Then the sounds of friendly chatter become louder. Though the trees of the Sablewood are unchanged here, there's a distinctive, safe, and comforting air. A few smiling faces turn to you as your carriage rolls in, waving or casting warm greeting toward the party. There is lively music drifting your direction from the tavern at the center of town. You know you need to find the Whitefire Arcanist to deliver the package from the king. What would you like to do? Cue cries of, oh no, we didn't finish looting them. Precisely, AKL. And even this arrival in Hush. Hush itself is sort of defined by the Sablewood. Like, the fact that they need this fucking, like, noise suppression field is distinctly defining the, characteristics of the Sablewood, almost, rather than Hush. During their discussion... Okay, so they can choose from one of the options below. Oh, Wildborn Dwarf. I see. During their discussion... Oh... Bear small scratches. Okay, no, never mind. Choose an additional NPC from the list above. The second will be a friend that has knowledge of where the Whitefire Arcanist lives. Demiplane, go look into that for sure. Hell yeah. I like Demiplane a lot. They last saw this person at the tavern and sends you in its direction. For example, your PCs might meet Fidget in town. After some conversations and coaxing, Fidget points the party to the tavern to meet Lausa. Yeah, so we get some pushing. And I think that in terms of, like, what we should plan for, right? In terms of what we should plan for, I think it is absolutely reasonable. And I think that this module is spot on, that they'll just want to talk to somebody. I think, honestly, if you are trying to plan this out, you plan out NPC route and the just non-NPC route. Right? Those are kind of the 2 routes I'm thinking of. Because an NPC route is so, like, kind of clear and obvious, I think. There are some ways that we can anticipate the non-NPC route. And the NPC route, you know, is pretty detailed within the book itself, so I'm not too worried about that. So, for beat 3, we're going the NPC route. Pretty detailed in the book. Not too much needed. For the non-NPC route, we just want to decide some things, you know? We just want to decide some things. Non-NPC route. So we just have a few facts that we should keep on the top of our head. Number 1, Arcanist lives in a tree house. So relatively visible from a long distance. On top of that, the treehouse glows. Beyond that, I don't think it's explicitly stated where the treehouse is actually located. So you make your way past the homes of the village, then the farmlands, you see a variety of crops, etc., etc. You notice the Sablewood trees have hundreds of unique faces carved into every side. One tree, taller than the rest, bears the Arcanist's home, like an overripe fruit. It does not specify where the Whitefire Arcanist treehouse is, but given that she is, like, the leader of their religious order, that she, like, built the borders of the town, presumably. Actually, not presumably. It says later during the ward renewal that she made the pillars that actually make Hush quiet. I think it is very reasonable to assume that beyond that, we could assume that her house is in the center of the 4 Hush totems. So not necessarily the center of the village. That's the, you know, that's the the Clover Tavern, but we could assume that her house is in the center of the Hush totems. And so they could maybe logic that out. That's maybe a route to get there. So we're just trying to predict some potential routes, some potential clues that we could give them if they ask. It's visible from a long distance. It fucking glows. And we could assume that her thing is relatively in the center of the Hush totems. Those are kind of 3 clues that we could use. Beyond that, maybe there is some... Nah, there wouldn't be a signpost. This is a pretty tight-knit community. I'm trying to think of any other ways that we could get them there where they're not talking to anybody. If none of the above work, the MacGuffin, upon examination, could be slightly, almost imperceptibly, pulled in the direction of the Arcanist as the primary... Actually, something that we could do. It might not even be the Arcanist. It could be in the direction of the Open Veil. The Open Veil is like the place of power nearby. It's where the Arcanist brings you in order to basically reinfuse the runestone that you're carrying, the MacGuffin. So what you could do is you could have it be pulled in the direction of the Open Veil as the nearby place of power. The route to the Open Veil just so happens to pass near-ish to the treehouse. Definitely where it would be in view. So then if they choose to just, skip the Arcanist altogether, they might go to the Open Veil first, they might get confused, they might then go back to the Arcanist. But you can at least, if they go this direction, if they go like the magical compass direction, you can at least introduce the generalized location of the treehouse, and then they might come back to it later. And then the Clover Tavern. The Clover Tavern is a sight to behold, with 6 curving stories climbing the trunk of the ancient tree. This is the heart of the community, always crowded with music and good-natured conversation. Newcomers to the bar must take off their shoes and hang them over a line that stretches around the bar's ground floor. Inevitably, by the time the visitors leave, their shoes will be shined and filled with small trinkets. As you enter, what would you like to do? Let the players roleplay, introduce them to the barkeep or a friendly local who asks them to hang their shoes on the line. Let them explore the different levels of the tavern. If you feel comfortable, ask some of your players to participate in describing details about it, which we talked about this earlier. And there's an optional, the first Frost Moss Festival. If they ask around, the PCs will find out the people of Hush are currently celebrating the first moss, not the Frost Moss, the first moss. Festival, the time when new crops in the sunless farms have the first layer of moss growing upon them, meaning they're beginning to ripen for the season. It's a celebration of the arrival of spring and the abundance of fresh fruits and vegetables the town will soon have. There's a good-natured arm wrestling competition, a stone painting class, and a small marketplace full of homemade trinkets. That's fun. I like that. I like little fun festivals, especially the arm wrestling competitions, the stone painting class, the homemade trinkets. Like, they could absolutely use the trinkets or the stone painting class to give to the Arcanist later on. That's really cool. That's really fun. I like that. I am probably going to keep that in mind for my run. When you're ready, guide the players in finding an NPC who will help them. If they bypassed asking someone in town, just use one of the NPCs from the list here instead. After a few exchanges, you can have the NPC say something like... The Arcanist is quite busy, but you've traveled so far. I'm sure she'll be more than hospitable. We would be lost without her. She keeps this whole place under a powerful ward, so that no dangers from the Sablewood can pass into town. You'll find her house to the south, through the farmland. It's hanging from one of the old Sablewood trees. You can't miss it. When the PCs are ready, set them off towards the Arcanist. Dun dun dun! The Treehouse, Part 4, or Act 4. So, pretty easy, pretty simple. We have the NPC, the non-NPC routing, and we get back to number 4. We don't really need any benefits or I don't think we really need any benefits or downsides. Anyways, so we get to number 4. This is what I would call, if we go back, if you guys have seen my how to make a map, which I need to make it into a long so that it's more consumable. But if we're talking about like how to make a map, right? We have an interesting point at first. So we have an interesting point with the Strixwolf. Then we have an obstacle. Then we have what I would call a neutral point. And you need these. You need neutral points like number 3 to break up the space in between the points. And then we're going to go back to another interesting point with the Arcanist, and then we're going to have one final obstacle before the end of the session. And I think that this is a totally fine pacing for a one-shot. You have something interesting, you have an obstacle, you have a breather, you have something interesting, and then you have the final obstacle. Seems like a totally fair way to pace a singular session or a singular one-shot. So yeah, that is absolutely how I am planning on running this. Obviously, there could still be skill checks, there could still be consequences, but all in all, we want Hush to feel like a little bit of a breather from what they just went through. Making your way past the homes of the village, then through the farmlands of Hush, you can see a variety of crops that have begun to cultivate a thin layer of glowing blue moss over the top of their fruits and vegetables. They pulse softly like a heartbeat as you passed. Among the thriving groves, you notice that the sablewood trees in this area have hundreds of unique faces carved into all sides, the eyes peering in every direction. One tree, taller than the rest, bears the Arcanist home, like an overripe fruit. It hangs from a braid of rope, as wide around as a giant's forearm, tied to a massive branch and counterweighted by a cabin-sized boulder lying at the base of the tree. The stone is marked with a collection of symbols, and the cabin windows flash with a soft yellow-green light. What would you like to do? So for this treehouse, give the player the options to roleplay and problem solve. Use the section below as guidance or create your own. If they try to call to the Arcanist from below, there is no response, but the light within still flickers. Okay. If they try to cut the counterweight rope, it will immediately blast them backward a few feet, dealing a point of stress. Get fucked. If they try to climb the tree, it's an agility roll with a difficulty of 13. On a failure, a limb of the tree grabs them, gently sets them down the forest floor, which then resumes its original form. Okay. When they finally do something to successfully get the Arcanist's attention, use the following to describe her as she emerges from her cabin to greet them. That's so interesting that it doesn't describe anything that's like a guaranteed success. It's just, hey, climb the tree. It's a kind of a tough agility roll. But, you know, you could just bash your head against it. This is very much something that I'll have to think about. Although this is also kind of something where the objective is so clear and obvious. And because we have stress as a downside, I don't really feel like I need to prep that much for it. I feel like I can pretty easily just improv this part of it. Of like setting DCs on the fly and setting downsides to it on the fly. Because they won't all be that different. They will all be something related to the tree. And they are all exploration type deals. So I feel like it'll be pretty easy to just give them either damage consequences or stress consequences. Okay, so the Arcanist, a 7 foot, holy fuck, a 7-foot mix of humanoid and firefly. The Arcanist is a fairy that moves in a combination of both very slow and suddenly jerky motions. Though her expressions are difficult to read, her emotions are very clear in her voice. She is old but spry and eyes the group mischievously. Are you the group Emerus sent from the capital? Oh my, you're rather late, aren't you? Come in. As the Arcanist lowers her home and invites you inside, you'll notice the treehouse is surprisingly spacious. TARDIS situation? Probably not. The main room is a crowd of potion bottles, spellbooks, runes, plants, and small creatures of all kinds. But no one could classify this place as messy. It's clear that if anyone moved a single item, even an inch, the old fairy would notice. Let the players roleplay with the Arcanist. Make her curious about their journey, the NPC who directed them towards their house, and how each of them might have imagined they might die one day. Well, that's pretty good. I like that too. I like that a lot. Once she's had enough conversation, the Arcanist will ask about the package from King Emerus in order to inspect it in safety. she will magically unfold her home as if it were a blossoming flower. She'll hurry the players to get the crate inside before closing the cabin back up, now just a bit bigger. When she opens the delivery, read the below aloud. This is very interesting. It's like very like soft magic, which is very interesting to have in this sort of game that has, you know, these distinct magical like grimoires and spells and cards. This sounds very like Lord of the Rings soft magic-esque, which is interesting. I don't hate it. I don't like it. I'm very neutral on it. It's very... I'll have to think about it a little bit more. Inside King Emerus's package lies a massive stone with a lion's face carved into it. Marlowe, you recognize this as the keystone of the capital city gate's main archway. The Arcanist nods sagely as soon as she sees it, saying, "Of course, the king would keep this delivery a secret." Oh man, I'm really gonna have to work on the Arcanist voice. I think that's gonna be the most important one. And I don't know. I'm old. If anyone knew your city was no longer warded, you would have been conquered before sunrise. Oh, no, that's not it. That's not it at all. Okay, well, we'll see. I'll practice. With this ominous warning, she starts to unfurl her treehouse yet again. We must travel to the open vale to reinstate the ward, but such an effort of magic will attract dangerous creatures from the darkest reaches of the Sablewood. I'll need your help. If the players seem enthusiastic about helping, you should cut straight to the open vale, transitioning into Act 5. Otherwise, you can encourage the players to describe their time traveling with the eccentric Whitefire Arcanist. The Ward Renewal. On direction from the Arcanist, your carriage pulls into a mysterious clearing in the shape of a perfect circle. The only area of the Sablewood you've seen without trees to block out the sky. This is the open vale. Speak to the players as the Arcanist, describing the open vale as a place used for strong ritual magic. It is where she first forged the ward pillars that reside on all four corners of Hush, keeping the village safe. She almost died in that ritual, but is reluctant to say more for fear of angering the forgotten gods. Engage the PCs in conversation. Then, when you're ready, read the following. The Arcanist's antenna perk up in a disconcerting way. This is good. Stop, stop, yes. Here. Now, come help me. I'm old. This time, she unfolds the carriage, as she did with her home, and stands over the crate, humming. Her body starts to glow brighter, flickering in the night. I will need an hour of time to prepare. You all enjoy the night air while you can. We'll be busy very soon. A short rest. Tell the PCs that they will now take a short rest. They cannot do the same option twice. Tend to wounds, clear stress, repair armor, propel. Ancient Skeleton Battle Guide. So let's think about this. This seems pretty straightforward. There does not seem to be a lot that they can really fuck up when it comes to interacting with the Arcanist, right? And I'm tempted to just leave it that way, you know? I think it's just like lore shit. I will say, if you were making a more, if this was within the context of a larger campaign, I would have multiple things that the Arcanist knows that would maybe, you know, represent some branching paths here on this. So, like, they find out about that ritual that she mentioned, right? The one where she almost died. Like, okay, they get information about the ritual. Maybe here they get information about the Sablewood. Here they get information about the forgotten gods. Right? That's something that you can do with this sort of wise old, you know, not player character, NPC. Something that I'm not as concerned with here. You know, again, for within the context of me running a one-shot, I'm not as concerned about these branching paths. There's maybe some fun things that you could do for the branching paths, but it's not something that I feel like I need to prep. I feel like there's enough interesting stuff here without prepping it, and the more we prep out, the longer our shit's gonna be, right? So I'm willing to let this be a straight fucking line over to 5. And then 5 is the ritual begins. So let's see. Let's think about this combat a little bit. All right, the ritual begins. Read the following aloud. The Arcanist lets out a shrill cry. The keystone has finally responded. Quickly, surround me. The ritual must begin or I'll lose the pathway. Hurry! Her body begins to glow brighter and brighter still as her eyes roll backwards into her head and the entire carriage lifts a foot off the ground. An unearthly cry echoes from the woods, alerted by the arcane energy. Then, place the Whitefire Arcanist standee at the center of the table. Ask the players to also place their standees in the scene. Finally, place 4 ancient skeletons within close range of the Arcanist and 2 forest wraiths within far range. Then read the following aloud. You feel a rumble as 4 ancient skeletons emerge from the ground, rusted swords in hand, disturbed by the forces of magic used by the Arcanist. In the distance, 2 forest wraiths float ominously towards you. I'm going to start a countdown die for the ritual. Your goal is to hold off the enemies until her work is complete. Let's see. Grab a d8 and set it to the 8 side. This is a countdown die. It will tick down 1 number every time an adversary is taken down. I didn't read that part. I knew there was a countdown die in this segment, but I didn't read that it's every time an adversary is taken down. I think that's good. I like that as the basis for it. I like that as the basis for the countdown. That's cool. It will tick up every time the Whitefire Arcanist is hit with an attack. Oh! I like that. I like that a lot. It counts up when she's hit, and it counts down when you take out an adversary. It gives a very tug-of-war feel to this. And it's also, every time she's hit, it doesn't specify how much she's hit for. Oh, that's super cool. I like that a lot. That's a good use of it, I think. When the countdown reaches 0, the ritual is complete and the fight will end. Yeah. Absolutely. Because I'm assuming the Arcanist will just fucking destroy anyone who gets in her way. So the moment that the ritual is done, you know, she's gone. But that does also mean that you have to defeat 8 adversaries, assuming she takes no damage. So there is an interesting strategic thing here of, like, how much do you defend her? How much do you not defend her? Like, what do we think the skeleton's goals are? They're being drawn by the Arcanist magic, and kind of the conceit of the fight is that every time she gets hit, like, the skeleton, like, the thing delays. So that would imply that they're trying to hit her, right? That would imply it to me. But it's how intelligently do we want to run these ancient skeletons? What? Do they have that sort of stat block? No, they don't. Yeah, they don't even have, like, a good thing for me to base their intelligence off of, you know? Or their strats. You only start with 6, so you need to bring out 2 more. Either Skellies or the Wraiths. Yeah, you need to bring out at least 2 more. Yeah, you're right. You're right. They're basically tools of the darker forces of the Sablewoods itself. I think those guys are just mooks. Yeah. Yeah, so it's trying to debate, are they just going to mindlessly go after the Arcanist? Are they going to get distracted by the PCs? Like, that's the real thing we kind of have to decide here is, what are their goals? I think their ultimate goal is to stop the Arcanist, but how much are we going to be able to distract them from their main goal? Because that would keep it safer for the PCs, but obviously more dangerous for the Arcanist. But the only downside to the Arcanist getting hit, really, because I don't think she has a stat block, does she? I mean, you could assume some sort of stat block, but basically, we have to weigh, like, what is fun and, like, what makes sense here. Because I think what makes sense here is for all of the enemies to bum rush the Whitefire Arcanist and to basically just hit her over and over and over and over and over again. And that will make this combat a fucking slog. But I do think that that's probably what makes the most sense internally. So we're going to have to see how much can we divert from what makes sense to replace that with what is fun. Encounters can have their own fear moves that let you spend fear in a unique way. For this encounter, you'll have one called Vengeance of the Veil. Spend a fear to call forth 2 additional skeletons from the ground within close range of the carriage. Add 2 tokens to the action tracker. Forest Wraith Battle Guide. Forest Wraiths can attack from far range with a +3 attack modifier. On a success, they deal 1d10 +4 magic damage. They have resistance to physical, meaning any incoming physical damage is cut in half, rounded up. Interesting. Their Memory Delve makes the target vulnerable, which means all rolls you make against them are at advantage. This condition doesn't stack, so it's best to use this once per PC. Pass-through should be used... Pass-through should be used sparingly to avoid incapacitating the whole party at once, because this move knocks a PC out of their body and stops them from acting until an adversary is taken down. Using the Vengeance of the Veil encounter move can be a useful way to generate new, easily defeatable adversaries to avoid this from happening. Damn, they have to give you advice on how to not accidentally TPK with the Forest Wraiths. Wait, let me see. 2 fear and make an attack roll against the target in melee. On success, the Force Wraith passes through the body, pushing their soul from their body. They cannot act again until the ritual countdown ticks down 1 value. Zam. That's kind of wacky. Holy shit, dude. Yeah, shit. I think we're good. We really didn't need to take many notes past 4. Like, past 4, you're kind of just on the trail that you need to go down, and there's not much deviation that's gonna happen. The only thing that I need to note for myself is for 4, follow book, and for 5, consider targeting priority to make sure that the combat doesn't drag, but also isn't accidentally too deadly. You know what I'm saying? I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. We got some prep for Daggerheart done. All right. Sick. I think that's going to be it. Not to, you know, cut off the stream unduly soon, but I'd love to be able to save my voice a little bit. And, you know, I think that was pretty solid.